I should have trusted my gut. The moment I pulled up to the house, something felt wrong. It wasn't the kind of wrong you can explain right away. Not the obvious horror movie wrong, like a boarded-up mansion or a rotting farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. No, this place looked perfect. Too perfect. A grand southern-style estate, towering 3 stories high, its white columns gleaming in the late afternoon sun. The wraparound porch had rocking chairs, the kind you'd expect to see an old couple sitting in, sipping sweet tea. There was a freshly paved driveway, a perfectly manicured lawn, and flower beds that looked like something out of a magazine. And yet, something about the air felt stale, like the house had been preserved rather than lived in. I shut off my van's engine, wiped the sweat from my palms, and checked the work order. Client, Charles Chevalier, requested service, full property security installation. Special requests, cameras inside the crawl space. That last part made me pause. I'd installed thousands of security systems before, but never had someone asked for cameras in their crawl space. Attics? Sure. Garages? All the time. But a crawl space? I looked up at the house again. That strange feeling in my gut twisting tighter. This was not going to be a normal job. The front door opened before I even knocked. A man stood in the entryway, tall and thin, dressed in a crisp black suit that looked absurdly formal for the middle of the day. His face was sharp, all angular cheekbones and sunken eyes, his skin almost too pale. His hair was slicked back, and despite the warm air, he didn't seem to be sweating at all. "You must be the technician," he said, his voice smooth and measured. Yeah, name's Dan." I forced a smile, stepping forward with my toolbox. "Here to install your security system." "Excellent." He stepped aside, gesturing me in. "I'm Charles Chevalier. My sister, Eloise, is in the sitting room. She'll be overseeing the work." I hesitated before stepping inside. The air inside the house was cold. Not just air-conditioned cold, but unnaturally cold, like stepping into a crypt. The smell of antique wood and something faintly metallic clung to the air. Eloise sat in an ornate chair, sipping something from a delicate glass. Her dark hair was tied back in an elegant bun, and she wore a flowing black dress that looked straight out of a different century. Her lips curled into a slow, deliberate smile as she eyed me. "You're the one setting up the cameras," she said, tilting her head slightly. Yeah." I shifted under her gaze. "Wonderful," she murmured. "We've been needing this for some time." Charles shut the door behind me with a soft click. I suddenly felt very trapped. The first few cameras were easy. I set up motion sensors at the front and back doors, installed cameras along the hallways, even put a few in their grand dining room per Charles's request. But all the while, I felt their eyes on me. Eloise watched from the corner of every room, sipping from that same delicate glass. Charles followed me silently, his footsteps too light for someone his size. They never asked questions about how the cameras worked. Never showed any interest in the app I installed on their phone to monitor the footage. It was like they didn't care about security at all. They only cared about me. And then, finally, I reached the part I was dreading. The crawl space. Charles led me through a narrow hallway, past a door that had been bolted shut with heavy iron locks, and into the basement. The air grew thicker as we descended. The basement was vast, larger than I expected, with old stone walls and wooden support beams that looked ancient. A single exposed light bulb flickered overhead, casting long, stretching shadows across the dirt floor. Charles stopped at a low, square opening in the wall, the entrance to the crawl space. I crouched down, shining my flashlight inside. The space was huge, much larger than a normal crawl space. The dirt floor was uneven, with strange grooves and patterns dug into it, like something had been dragged through the soil. And the smell. The air was thick with the scent of decay, something rotting. I swallowed hard. "You, ever have animals get in here?" "No," Charles said. His voice was too firm. I hesitated, then started unpacking my gear. "All right, I'll install 2 cameras in the corners, facing inward." "That won't be enough," Charles said. I looked up at him. "What do you mean?" He gestured toward the darkest part of the crawl space, where my flashlight beam barely reached. "You'll need a camera back there," he said. I stared into the shadows. Something about the way he said it sent a chill through me. I wasn't sure why, until I realized there were footprints in the dirt. Not mine, not Charles's, bare feet, leading into the darkness. My pulse spiked. "Who else has been down here?" I asked. Charles didn't answer. His smile did instead. I turned back to the crawl space, gripping the camera with sweaty fingers. And as I did, I heard something shift in the darkness. Not a rat, not an animal. Something bigger, something breathing. I froze, heart hammering, and then from the blackness I heard a voice, low, raspy, not human. "Is it feeding time already?" For a moment I thought I imagined it. The voice, low, raspy, wrong, echoed from the darkness of the crawl space. "Is it feeding time already?" A sickening chill crawled up my spine. I turned to Charles, my breath hitching in my throat. He was watching me, his expression unreadable, his lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "You heard that, right?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Charles didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small silver key, and pressed it into my palm. "If you wish to leave this house," he said smoothly, "you'll finish installing the cameras." I looked down at the key. It was old, tarnished, its jagged edges worn from use. What does this unlock?" I asked, my mouth dry. Again, no answer. Just that smile. The air in the crawl space shifted. A soft shuffling sound, like something moving just beyond my flashlight's reach. I swallowed hard. This was insane. I should have dropped my tools, stormed out of there, driven as fast as I could away from this house. But my legs felt rooted to the dirt floor. Somehow I knew. If I turned my back on that darkness, whatever was in there would come for me. So, against every instinct screaming at me to run, I forced myself to keep working. I attached the first camera to one of the wooden support beams near the entrance, angling it toward the darkness. My hands shook as I screwed it in place. The second camera had to go deeper. I crawled forward, the dirt cold against my palms. Every movement kicked up dust and something else, a smell thicker than before, like rotting meat left out in the sun. As I reached the next beam, my flashlight caught something. I stopped. My breath hitched. The footprints, they didn't just lead into the darkness, they circled back. I wasn't alone down here. Someone or something was moving in the crawl space with me. The sound came again, a slow, deliberate shuffling, closer this time, and then breathing, right behind me. I turned my head just enough and saw fingers, pale, thin, curling around the wooden beam behind me. I lunged forward, scrambling toward the entrance. My shoulder slammed into a support post, sending a shower of dirt cascading from the low ceiling. My flashlight slipped from my grip, rolling into the darkness. And then I heard it. A deep, wet inhale, like something savoring my scent. My shaking hands fumbled to install the second camera. "Just finish the job," I told myself. "Get the damn camera up and get out." My fingers found the power cable, plugging it in. The small red light blinked to life. Then, from the darkness, a low growl. Not an animal, not human, something in between. I turned my head just enough to see a shape emerging from the shadows. It was crawling toward me. Arms too long, elbows bent at unnatural angles. The fingers, bony and clawed, dragged through the dirt, leaving deep furrows. The face, if you could even call it that, was half hidden in shadow. But I could see the teeth, jagged, yellowed, and smiling. My body reacted before my brain could. I lunged for my flashlight, grabbed it, and twisted it back toward the thing. The beam of light hit its face. For a split second I saw it fully, sunken skin, stretched too tight over a skull-like face. Eyes milky white, pupils small and predatory. The mouth curled into a grotesque grin, too wide for its face. Then it shrieked, a piercing, ear-splitting wail that made my skull feel like it would split open. I kicked backward, scrambling toward the exit. Charles blocked the opening, standing calmly, watching me struggle. "Let me out!" I screamed. The thing behind me lurched forward, its fingers brushing my ankle. I threw the key at Charles, desperation clawing at my throat. His expression never changed. He knelt, picked up the key, and unlocked the bolted door on the far side of the basement. For the first time, I saw what was behind it, and I wished I hadn't. The door creaked open, revealing a staircase. And at the bottom of those stairs, eyes, dozens of them, glowing in the dark, and then movement, figures crawling into the dim light, not just one of those things, not even two, an entire family. They moved like insects, hunched and predatory, their skeletal limbs bending in ways that made my stomach turn. Their sunken eyes locked onto me, their grins stretching impossibly wide, and in that moment I realized the crawl space wasn't just a storage area, it was a feeding pen. And I was the next meal. Charles stepped aside, as if welcoming them. I turned back to the crawl space, where the first creature was still waiting for me. Trapped. I was trapped. My breath came in ragged gasps, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Then Eloise's voice drifted down from upstairs, calm, collected. "Choose wisely, Mr. Dan." My vision blurred. There were only two ways out of this basement. One led deeper into the house, into the darkness, where the things waited. The other led back into the crawl space, where something else had already marked me. I had to decide, and I had to decide now. I made my choice. With my heart hammering in my chest, I spun back toward the crawl space, diving in just as I heard the first of those things skitter up the basement stairs behind me. The dirt floor scraped my palms, my knees digging into the cold, damp earth as I dragged myself forward. The air was thick, heavy with decay and something else, something ancient. Behind me, the shrieking intensified. The creatures in the basement knew I was escaping, and they didn't like it. I could hear them crawling, their bodies moving unnaturally fast, their clawed hands scraping against the wooden steps. But I wasn't alone in here. The thing in the crawl space was still waiting for me. I saw movement ahead, a shifting in the shadows. I swung my flashlight wildly, its weak beam catching a glimpse of pale, bony limbs folded in ways that shouldn't be possible. It was watching me. It knew I had nowhere else to go. I tried to move faster, ignoring the burning in my lungs, the way my hands trembled against the dirt. The air was getting thicker, suffocating. I reached the first camera, the one I had installed at the entrance. Its red light blinked steadily in the darkness. If I could just... A hand clamped onto my ankle, cold, thin, too many knuckles. I kicked wildly, my boot colliding with something soft. A wet, guttural snarl filled the air as the grip loosened. I scrambled forward, my fingers clawing at the dirt. The exit was so close. Then I heard it. A soft whisper, right by my ear. "You should have taken the other door." Something crawled over me. I screamed, my entire body twisting as I tried to shake it off. My flashlight spun wildly, the beam illuminating its face for a split second. A wide, grinning mouth filled with teeth too sharp for a human. Its eyes, milky, predatory, locked onto mine. Then it was gone, skittering back into the darkness. I didn't wait. I lunged forward, shoving myself out of the crawl space. I landed hard on the wooden floor, my palms scraping against splinters. I barely had time to register my surroundings before I realized the house was silent. Eloise and Charles were gone. The basement door stood wide open, and something was moving upstairs. I forced myself up, staggering toward the front door. Locked. Of course it was locked. My hands fumbled with the deadbolt, slick with sweat, my breath coming in sharp gasps. Then a creak. From the top of the staircase. I turned my head slowly, every muscle in my body locking into place. At the top of the stairs, someone was watching me. Not Eloise, not Charles. Something else. It stood too still, its body wrapped in shadows. But its smile... I recognized that smile. It was the same grin I had seen in the crawl space, the same impossibly wide, jagged-toothed expression. Except this time, it wasn't crouched in the dirt. It was standing upright. And it was wearing Charles's clothes. My stomach dropped. Charles was gone. Or worse, he wasn't gone. He had become something else. The thing at the top of the stairs took a step forward. The old wood groaned under its weight. My fingers finally found the deadbolt, twisting it frantically. Another step. It tilted its head, its milky white eyes locked onto me. I wrenched the door open and ran. The road that shouldn't exist. I didn't look back. I sprinted down the driveway, my legs burning, my breath coming in short, painful gasps. The street was too quiet. No wind, no insects. Just that unnatural stillness. My car was still parked at the curb, the driver's side door wide open. I hadn't left it open. I didn't care. I lunged inside, slamming the door shut, my hands shaking as I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, the headlights flooded the street. And that's when I saw it. The houses. They were different. The entire neighborhood had changed. The houses that had been standing when I arrived were gone, replaced by identical, white picket fenced homes. All of them pristine, all of them too new, and standing in the front yards, families. Every house had one, men, women, and children, all dressed in 1950s-style clothing. All smiling, they watched me in perfect silence, their heads slightly tilted, their grins never fading. I slammed my foot on the gas. The tires squealed against the pavement as I sped forward. The road stretched too long. I should have reached the main highway in seconds. But the neighborhood just kept going. More houses, more smiling families. The street signs were blank. The sky above me was too dark, the moon an impossible shade of red. Then I saw it. The silent screams, the channel of interesting horror stories. If you are new on this channel, then don't forget to subscribe The Silent Screams and press the bell icon for interesting stories. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. A house, at the very end of the street. I recognized it immediately, the Chevalier house. I had looped back to the beginning. I slammed on the brakes, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I stared at the house, my vision swimming. The front door was wide open. Eloise stood in the doorway. Her smile was wider than before. And behind her, Charles stood perfectly still. His head tilted, his eyes blank and white. Just like the thing in the crawlspace. They had let me leave. But I hadn't escaped. I was trapped. And somewhere beneath the house I knew. The rest of them were still waiting, hungry, smiling, and ready to feed. I slammed my fists against the steering wheel, my breath ragged, my mind screaming at me to wake up, to snap out of this nightmare. But the nightmare wasn't ending. The Chevalier house stood in front of me, exactly as I had left it. Door open, Eloise in the doorway, Charles standing motionless behind her, his head still tilted at that unnatural angle. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. No, this isn't happening. I spun the wheel, throwing the car into reverse. The tires screeched, the whole vehicle jolting as I pressed the gas. But no matter how far I drove in reverse, I never left the street. The houses on either side didn't move. They didn't blur past me like they should have. I wasn't moving at all. I looked at the rearview mirror and nearly choked on my own breath. The road behind me wasn't real anymore. It was flat, like a painted backdrop on a stage. I turned back around and my stomach dropped. Eloise wasn't in the doorway anymore. She was standing at the edge of my headlights, her face pale and smiling, her hands perfectly still at her sides. I didn't see her move. She had just appeared there. And then, Charles took a step forward. The motion was slow, deliberate. Not human. His limbs jerked unnaturally, like a puppet on frayed strings. I felt my body go numb. I wasn't alone in the car anymore. Something was behind me. Watching. I could feel its presence, a cold, suffocating weight pressing down on my shoulders. A breath, soft and raspy, brushed against the back of my neck. "Welcome back," a voice whispered. I screamed. I threw open the door and bolted. The car wasn't safe. Nowhere was safe. But my body moved on instinct, fueled by pure terror. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The only thing worse than knowing something was behind me would be seeing it. I ran toward the only place I could. The Chevalier house. I was being herded. I knew it. But there was no other choice. As soon as my feet hit the porch, the door slammed shut behind me. I was inside, again. The house that knows your name. The air changed the second I stepped inside. The house felt bigger now, the hallways stretching impossibly far in both directions. The lights were dim, flickering, casting long, twisting shadows along the walls. My heart was hammering, my breath shallow. Something wasn't right. The layout had changed. The living room was gone. The staircase now led downward, spiraling into the earth. And in the distance, echoing from the depths below, I heard them. The others. They were laughing. Not normal laughter. It was wrong. like children pretending to be happy while something sharp loomed over them. I took a step back and felt something under my shoe. A photo. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The picture was old, edges yellowed with time. A family portrait. Eloise and Charles were in it, but they were younger, decades younger. They stood in front of the house, flanked by dozens of others. People who looked like them, dressed in fine clothing. Their smiles too wide, too identical, and in the very center of the photo, seated in a grand chair, a man. His suit was immaculate, pristine despite the photo's age. His eyes were black, pure, hungry black, and beneath the photo, scrawled in ink, were the words Maurice Chevalier, 1896. Maurice, the patriarch, the name Charles had whispered before everything had gone wrong. The house groaned, a deep, ancient sound vibrating through the walls. I wasn't alone. Something was waiting, and it was waiting below. The staircase spiraled downward, impossibly deep. I should have run, but I didn't, because I already knew the truth. I was never leaving. Not until I met him, not until I understood. I took a step forward and began my descent. Each step down the spiral staircase felt like sinking deeper into something I wasn't meant to see. The walls around me were no longer wood and drywall. They were stone, slick with moisture, pulsing with an unseen life. My breath fogged in the air, the temperature dropping the further I descended, and beneath the steady creak of my footsteps I could hear them. The others. Soft whispers skittered through the darkness, voices that weren't quite human. They giggled, chattered, but there was no joy in the sound. It was as if they were waiting for me. The air thickened, pressing against my skin like an unseen weight. I reached for my phone, my fingers fumbling over the screen. No signal. The flashlight app flickered as I aimed it downward. The steps below me stretched into a black void. There was no end in sight. I swallowed, forcing my legs to keep moving. The deeper I went, the more the house above faded. I couldn't hear the wind outside. I couldn't hear the creak of the floorboards anymore, just my own breathing. And theirs. A cold breath brushed against my ear. "He's waiting for you." I spun around, the flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. Nothing. The stairwell behind me was empty, but I knew I wasn't alone. My pulse pounded in my ears as I turned back and kept going. I had to keep going. Something had brought me here. Something had chosen me, and I needed to know why. The chamber beneath the house, after what felt like hours, the staircase ended. I stepped onto solid ground, my legs weak, my breathing shallow. A tunnel stretched before me, carved from ancient stone, the walls lined with old-fashioned lanterns, each flickered with a strange bluish fire. I moved forward cautiously, my footsteps unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. The tunnel led to a vast chamber, and in the center, standing beneath an ornate archway, was Maurice Chevalier. I knew him instantly, even though I had never met him, even though he had been dead for over a century. He was tall, his black suit untouched by time, his eyes like twin voids that swallowed the dim light. And he was smiling. Not like the others, not wide, grotesque, too human. His was subtle, a knowing smile, a predator's smile. He raised a hand in greeting. "You came." The words sent a shiver down my spine, not because they were unexpected, but because I realized he had been waiting for me. For a long time, the pact I swallowed hard, forcing myself to speak. "Who are you?" My voice barely echoed in the vast chamber. Maurice's smile didn't falter. "You already know." He gestured behind him, and I noticed something I hadn't before. A table, old, massive, and seated around it were the Chevalier family, dozens of them. Some fresh-faced, some ancient, their skin sagging, eyes milky and blind. All of them watching me, none of them breathing. The realization hit me like ice. They weren't alive, they were waiting. "I don't belong here," I whispered. Maurice tilted his head. "Don't you?" The whispering began again, the voices of the Chevalier rising in a soft, rhythmic chant, a language I didn't understand, a language I felt in my bones. Maurice stepped forward, his presence overwhelming. "We have always needed someone like you," he said, "a witness, a storyteller, a guide." I took a step back. I don't Maurice's smile widened. You do. You will. He raised his hand, and the chamber changed. The walls vanished, replaced by 1,000 lifetimes flashing before my eyes. I saw past meals, men and women who had been led here just as I had. I saw their choices, the ones who ran, the ones who stayed, the ones who joined them. And I saw something else, something worse. The town outside the Chevalier house wasn't real. It had never been. It was a trap, a web, and the family had been expanding it for centuries. Consuming, growing, the roads, the houses, the smiling families. All of it was part of them. You are special, Maurice whispered. I could feel his breath on my cheek. You can leave if you wish. You can wake up in your car, convinced this was all a dream. A pause, or you can stay, and truly understand. The chanting grew louder, the weight of their hunger pressed down on me. My vision blurred. The Chevalier were waiting for my answer, and deep down I knew no one had ever left. Not really, not without becoming part of the story. I had come here as an outsider, but now I was something else. The question was, what would I choose to be? The weight of their eyes bore into me, dozens of Chevaliers, frozen in time, their pale faces expectant. Maurice stood before them like a king addressing his court, his presence heavy, unshakable. The air was thick with something old, something that had always been here, waiting for me. And I was running out of time. I don't belong here, I whispered, though even as I said it, the words felt hollow. Maurice chuckled, a sound like rustling paper, like dead leaves skittering over stone. You keep saying that. His black eyes gleamed. Yet here you are. The chanting of the Chevalier rose again, their mouths moving in perfect unison. I stepped back. The floor shifted beneath me. A pulse, slow and rhythmic, vibrated through the stone. It wasn't solid anymore. It was breathing. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely audible. Maurice spread his arms. We want you to see. The moment he said it, my vision warped. The chamber melted away, darkness swallowing it whole, and then I was somewhere else. The feast that never ends. I stood in a massive banquet hall, stretching further than my eyes could see. The ceilings were impossibly high, lined with chandeliers that flickered with cold blue fire. And the table, God, the table was endless. It stretched into the distance, curving in ways that shouldn't be possible. And every seat was filled. The Chevalier, dressed in their finest attire, sat in perfect rows. Their eyes were hollow, their smiles unchanging, and in front of each of them was a plate. Not of food, of bones. Tiny brittle bones, stacked in intricate patterns. I staggered backward. This isn't real, Maurice's voice whispered in my ear, though he wasn't beside me. What is real, if not tradition? I turned, and the bones moved. Long skeletal fingers unfolded from the plates, twitching like dying spiders. Something stirred beneath the table, a wet, gurgling breath, a presence waiting to rise. My stomach lurched. This wasn't a meal. It was a ritual, a cycle. And I was standing in the middle of it. The price of seeing, why are you showing me this? I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Maurice appeared beside me, though I hadn't seen him move. Because you have a decision to make. He gestured to the endless table, to the smiling, silent faces of his family. You have seen what we are. He turned to me, eyes gleaming with something ancient. Now you must decide. Will you become one of us? Or will you be the next to feed our tradition? The air thickened, pressing against my skin. Every Chevalier turned their head toward me in unison. Their smiles did not change. Their eyes did not blink, but their presence was suffocating. Maurice reached into his coat, pulling out something small. A key. Aged brass, its surface slick with something dark. This will let you leave. He let the words hang between us, like a spider waiting for its prey to struggle. But leaving means forgetting. You will wake up in your car, lost on an empty road, unable to find this house again. His voice dropped lower. Or, you stay, and you learn the truth. My pulse pounded in my skull. I looked at the key. I looked at the banquet table, at the bones, at the thing waiting beneath it. I looked at Maurice, and I knew. There was no real choice, not for me, not anymore. The house that never lets go, I took the key. Maurice smiled wider. The Chevaliers laughed, a hollow, clinking sound like glass tapping against glass. The banquet hall shuddered, the walls warping, melting into something else. I felt the ground vanish beneath me. And then I was standing in my car, not sitting, standing. The door was open, the engine was still running, the road stretched ahead, empty. The Chevalier house was gone, the whole town was gone. It was just me, alone. The key was still in my hand. But when I looked at it now, it was rusted beyond recognition, as if it had been buried underground for centuries. And carved into the metal, almost too faint to see, was a single word. Remember. The headlights flickered, a breath of cold air rushed through the car, and I knew I was not alone anymore. Not really, the Chevaliers were still with me. Watching, waiting, and no matter how far I drove, I would never truly leave. The night swallowed the road ahead. My hands were locked on the wheel, knuckles white. The car's engine hummed steadily, but it felt distant. Like I was watching someone else drive, like my body was just going through the motions. The key sat in the cup holder. Remember. The word burned itself into my mind, over and over. I had left. But I hadn't really escaped. The first sign I drove for what felt like hours, but the gas gauge hadn't moved. The road stretched endlessly, the same twisted trees lining both sides, their branches curling inward like skeletal fingers. No street signs, no exits, no other cars. The silence in the car wasn't normal silence. It had weight, like something pressing in from all sides, whispering without making a sound. I checked the rearview mirror. A shape flickered in the back seat. I slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched against the pavement. The car lurched to a stop. My breathing was ragged, my pulse hammering in my throat. I turned slowly. The back seat was empty, but the leather was indented, as if someone had just been sitting there, watching me. The smiling family. A mile down the road, I saw it. A house. Not just any house. The house. The Chevalier house, standing exactly as I remembered, its towering frame untouched by time, its windows dark and hollow. My blood turned to ice. This was impossible. I had been driving away from it, hadn't I? I blinked. And suddenly, the house was gone. The road stretched ahead like it had never been there at all. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't sure if I still could. I pressed my foot to the gas, forcing the car forward, forcing myself to think, to stay rational. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe my mind was still trapped in that place, even if my body wasn't. Then I saw the people. A family standing by the side of the road. A father, mother, 2 kids, dressed in 1950s clothing, standing perfectly still, all of them smiling, too wide, too long. Their heads turned in unison as I passed, their eyes following me. Their lips never moved, but I heard their voices in my head. Welcome home. I nearly lost control of the car. By the time I looked in the rearview mirror, they were gone. The radio knows. The radio flickered on. I hadn't touched it. Static crackled, hissing through the speakers, shifting into something almost like whispers. A voice struggled through the distortion. You never left. I jabbed the power button. The static didn't stop. It only grew louder. The voice twisted, overlapping with another, then another, dozens of voices speaking in unison. Come back. Join us. You belong to us now. I ripped the key from the ignition. The car died instantly. The radio kept playing. The whispers didn't stop. The thing in the road. I didn't know how long I sat there, heart racing, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Then I saw it. Further down the road, standing directly in my path. A man. Number not a man. Maurice Chevalier. His suit was pristine, his hands folded behind his back. His black eyes gleamed in the headlights. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was waiting. I tried to start the car. The engine clicked, refusing to turn over. Maurice took a step forward. I twisted the key harder. The engine roared to life. Maurice vanished. But not like someone stepping away, like he had never been there at all. I didn't care. I slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward, speeding down the empty road, tires squealing. I couldn't stop shaking. I knew what this meant. I had left the house, but the house had never left me. And neither had they. The key that won't be lost. By the time I finally saw civilization, a gas station glowing in the distance, I was barely holding it together. I pulled into the lot, parking haphazardly, my hand still locked on the wheel. I needed air. I needed to see normal people. I stumbled out of the car. The clerk behind the counter was watching me. A skinny guy in a baseball cap, leaning against the register, chewing gum. "You okay, man?" he asked. I nodded, even though I knew I wasn't. I walked inside, grabbing a bottle of water with shaking hands. When I reached into my pocket to pay, I felt something cold, something metallic. My breath caught in my throat. I pulled it out, the key, the one Morris had given me. But it was different now. The rust was gone, the engraving was gone. Instead, it was polished, new, and the shape was wrong. Not a house key anymore, a car key. I looked up at the gas station clerk. He was smiling, too wide, too long. "Welcome home," he said. And then every light in the gas station flickered out. The lights died all at once. For a second, everything was absolute darkness, a crushing, suffocating black that swallowed the gas station whole. Then, just as suddenly, they flickered back on. The fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead, casting the place in their usual sterile glow. I was alone. The gas station clerk was gone. No sign of him, no sound, no movement, nothing. But the door hadn't opened. The bell above it hadn't rung. I wasn't breathing. I turned, scanning the aisles, my heartbeat thudding like a drum in my ears. The station was silent. Too silent. I took a step forward, and then I saw it. The reflection. The wrong reflection. In the glass cooler door, just beside the energy drinks. There I was, staring back at myself. But my reflection wasn't right. It was standing too still, too rigid, like a photograph instead of a reflection. And its eyes were wrong. Dark, hollow, and then it smiled. Not a real smile, not mine, something else, something wearing my face. I took a step back. The reflection stayed where it was. Then it raised its hand, a slow, deliberate motion, like it was waving at me, and in its fingers, glinting under the fluorescent light, was the key. A door that shouldn't be there. I ran, bolted out of the gas station, shoving through the glass doors into the night air. My car was still there, the engine idling softly. But the gas station, the sign was different now. The flickering red letters overhead no longer read Sunoco. They read Chevalier's Market. My stomach dropped. I turned my gaze past the parking lot, out to the road, and the breath left my body. I wasn't in town anymore. I was back in the woods. The same endless stretch of road, the same twisted trees, like I had never left, like I had just circled back to where it all began. And then I heard a creaking noise behind me, a slow, deliberate sound like wood bending under unseen weight. I turned. The gas station door was open, not just open, hanging ajar, leading into something that wasn't the store anymore. Not shelves, not a counter, not the aisles where I had just stood. Just darkness. And deep inside that darkness, I could hear something moving, a whisper in the dark. A cold wind slipped out from the open door, curling around me like icy fingers, and in that moment something whispered my name. "Come inside." The voice wasn't human. Not fully. It was layered, shifting, like 100 voices speaking at once, a chorus of hunger. A voice I had heard before, Maurice. I staggered backward, every nerve in my body screaming at me to run. But my feet wouldn't move. The key in my hand felt heavier now. I looked down at it, and the engraving was back. A single word. Home. My pulse pounded against my skull. I hurled the key away from me, sending it skidding across the pavement. But the moment it left my hand, the weight in my pocket returned. I reached in. The key was there again, still cold, still waiting, still mine. The gas station clerk returns. A hand clamped down on my shoulder. I spun around, nearly choking on my own scream. The clerk was there, except he wasn't right anymore. His eyes were too dark, pupils swallowing the whites. His smile was too wide, stretching past the limits of his face, and his voice, it was layered, like Maurice's, like the whispers. "You should go inside," he said. His fingers tightened. I yanked myself free, stumbling backward. "No," I gasped. His head tilted slightly, as if considering my response. Then slowly, his smile faded, for the first time. His lips pulled downward, his eyes narrowing, his entire face twisting into something unreadable. And then he lunged at me. The road that won't let go. I ran. I dove into my car, slamming the door shut. The moment I turned the key, the radio crackled to life. "You never left." The voices rose in a howling cacophony. The clerk's face appeared in the driver's side window, grinning, stretching. His skin began to split at the corners, peeling away like old wallpaper. And beneath it, something black and writhing moved. "You belong to us now," he whispered. I stomped on the gas. The car lurched forward, tires screeching against the pavement. The gas station lights vanished behind me, swallowed by the trees. I was back on the road, and in the rear-view mirror, the clerk was still watching me, but not from the gas station. From the back seat, smiling. The clerk's grin split wider in the rear-view mirror. "You belong to us now." His voice slithered through the car like smoke, thick and suffocating. I yanked the wheel, nearly veering off the road. The tires screamed against the asphalt, but when I glanced back, he was gone. Not in the back seat, not in the mirror, but the seatbelt on the passenger side was still buckled, as if someone was still sitting there, watching, waiting. The radio fizzled with static, a low warbling hum that sent chills down my spine. And then, a voice cut through. Not Maurice, not the clerk, not the whispering things from the darkness. This one was familiar. "You can't run, little brother." I almost lost control of the car. That voice, it couldn't be. It wasn't possible. "Eli," I choked out. No response, just the crackle of static. The road stretched ahead, endless and empty. But the trees were closer now, bending inward, closing in. The branches looked like fingers, reaching, grasping. I pressed the gas harder. I had to get out. A town that shouldn't exist. Then I saw it. Up ahead, a town, rows of Victorian-style houses, their windows glowing in the dark. Street lamps flickered along the sidewalks. It looked old, like something frozen in time, untouched by modern decay. A perfect little town. But I knew better. This wasn't a place on any map. This wasn't a place that should exist. Yet the moment I saw it, something inside me recognized it. Like a word on the tip of my tongue. Like a memory I wasn't supposed to have. And above the houses, towering over everything, was a manor. Ornate, grand, with a name carved into the iron gate. Chevalier. My stomach lurched. I slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop just at the town's edge. Everything in me screamed to turn around, to flee. But the radio crackled again. "Come home, brother." And this time, I wasn't alone. They were waiting for me. The people emerged slowly, stepping out of houses, drifting onto the streets. Men, women, children, all smiling. Their faces were wrong, too perfect, too still, like porcelain dolls. Their eyes never blinked, and in the center of them all, a tall figure, dressed in an old-fashioned suit. His face was thin, his skin pale as bone. His hands folded neatly in front of him, as if he had been expecting me. Maurice Chevalier, and beside him, a boy, no older than 12, dark hair, wide eyes, and a familiar scar along his jawline. I couldn't breathe. "Eli," I whispered. My brother smiled, but it wasn't him. I knew it the moment I looked into his eyes. The light that had once been there was gone. Hollow, like something else had taken his place. "You finally came back," Eli said. His voice was flat, lifeless. And then, Maurice took a step forward, and the whole town took a step with him, like puppets on invisible strings. The choice I threw the car into reverse, but the moment my foot hit the gas, the tires wouldn't move, the engine died, and the key in my pocket, it was hot now, burning into my skin. I ripped it out, throwing it onto the dashboard. Maurice's smile widened. "You know what must be done," he said. His voice was like silk and rot. Take your place among us. The town whispered in unison, take your place, take your place, take your place. The air grew thick, pressing against my skin like unseen hands. I knew what they wanted. I knew what the key meant. I could leave, but only if I took his place. Eli's place. I could break the cycle. If I stayed, if I became one of them, if I let my brother go. Maurice extended his hand. A contract without words, a choice without mercy. And behind him, Eli was watching me, waiting, for me to save him, or to fail. The fire I reached into my pocket, not for the key, for the lighter, the old scratched-up Zippo I had carried for years. Maurice's eyes flickered, a first hint of doubt. You don't want to do that, he said. I flicked the flame alive. The townspeople staggered back, hissing like animals. The air around them seemed to waver, like heat rising off pavement. Maurice's smile faltered. You are bound to us, he murmured. The moment you took the key, you were ours. I held the flame up, then I touched it to the key. A blinding blue flash erupted, the key shrieked, a sound like twisting metal and screaming voices, and the town began to burn, the escape. The houses warped, their perfect facades peeling away, revealing rotting wood and crumbling stone. The people collapsed, their smiles shattering into screams. Maurice staggered, his skin cracking like old porcelain. Eli's eyes widened. For the first time, he looked afraid, and then he ran to me. We have to go, he shouted. I grabbed his hand. We ran, past the burning town, past the screaming figures, past the manor gates, which were already twisting into ash. The road opened ahead of us, and at the end, a gas station. A real one this time. Not the Sunoco, not the trap, just a gas station. We didn't stop running until we reached it, and when I turned back, the town was gone, like it had never been there at all. Aftermath, I don't know how long we sat there. Eli didn't say much, just held onto my sleeve like a kid again. I checked my phone, no missed calls, no proof of anything. The only thing in my pocket was the key, blackened, twisted, ruined, but still there. I don't know what we escaped from, I don't know if it's really over, but I do know one thing. Somewhere out there, Maurice Chevalier is waiting. And the town is rebuilding itself, for the next unlucky soul who takes the key, for the next person who gets lost on the road. And I can still hear the whisper. Software distant, but closer than before. Take your place. The silent screams, the channel of interesting horror stories. If you are new on this channel, then don't forget to subscribe The Silent Screams and press the bell icon for interesting stories. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe.